This video is part 2 on Alfred Lord Tennyson's poetry. We're closing here thinking about the themes and meaning of the poem, The Lotos-Eaters. Looking at the poem, perhaps a universal theme might be that conflict within human beings between remaining isolated to themselves or taking responsibility either for others or for their community at large. The conflict here between the men's desire to remain on the island, to eat the lotus, to numb themselves by eating the lotus, which is drug-like, or to return to society, which they connect with work and responsibility. I also wanted to point you to another example, or an example of a web resource that could be potential for thinking about a source for the second paper for the semester. The last video that I made used a library resource, so I wanted to point out and say a couple of things too about using sources from the internet. So I'm going to pull this up and show you. This is actually from a website called the Victorian Web. And there's a really interesting article in here about the poem. Looking at it in the context, though, within the time period. And this takes us back to those that outline that I gave to you of the different periods in the Victorian era. The Lotos-Eaters, according to this source, is more of a critique of British work habits and imperial duty. Tennyson repeatedly emphasizes that the Lotos-Eaters do no work and bear no responsibility. Why should we only toil, the roof and crown of things, asks one sluggish Grecian. Figuratively at least, the land of the Lotos-Eaters is a romantic escape from a life of enduring toil that most industrial age Britons knew only too well. Down here too, perhaps he was voicing dissatisfaction of common Englishmen who wondered to what end they contributed their lives to industrial growth and empire. So the argument made here is that the poem, although it's about, it's set during the time of Odysseus, of Ulysses. In fact, this is a comment on the English and their life situation at this period of time. Now, I want to point out to the Victorian Web because it is a good resource for thinking about literature of this time period. And I want to emphasize that when you're looking around on the web, you do need to figure out what the source is, whether it's reliable. And I'm going to click on Victorian Web down here to go back to what is the Victorian Web. I want to see if this is a reliable source to use. So the Victorian Web started back in 1987, actually. It's been around for a long time. It's one of the oldest academic and scholarly websites when it entered the web in 1994. And I'm not quite sure why there's the difference in the dates there. It looks like a valuable source to me. It is one that is supported by, let's see, I'm going to find out who this is. This guy who is the webmaster, editor-in-chief. He's a professor at Brown University in English and art history. So it looks like this is a valid source. So this looks like this could be a source that I could use if I were writing a paper on Tennyson's poetry. So as you work on your paper, make sure that you're looking at things like this to make sure that you're looking at the validity of the source before you pull something directly from the web. But the web is fine too. I would highly encourage you to go to the library website as well, but there are things on the web that you can find as well. Google Scholar is a good place to go. Google Books is a good place to go. But please ask questions if you have them.